Today is August 12th, 2015. This is on the Thunderblog page, dated February 16th, 2008. So full 3 years, almost 4 years, before I made the discovery of what Earth is. But I guess it's one of those things that, it's been around for a while. You just had to dig for it. And this is concerning magnetic reconnection. It was written by Donald Scott, and he has a lot of good points here. But one thing in particular that sticks out is the idea of concept existing, which aren't true at all, but somehow perpetuate themselves via groupthink. And he talked about Hans Alfven in this regard. And Alfven, he was explicit in his condemnation of the reconnecting concept. Basically, reconnection is very, very simple to understand why it doesn't work. Here, I'll go ahead and draw a little diagram for you. All reconnection claims is that you have something that's magnetic, producing a magnetic field, or electrical currents flowing through a magnetic field. So something like that, okay? All reconnection says is that somehow those magnetic fields combine with each other, releasing energy. So say you have a bigger magnetic field up here, okay? And they somehow snap together right in the center, or right where the magnetic fields touch. Right there. See that? And somehow it's supposed to release energy, and the magnetic fields are supposed to release energy from somehow touching or reconnecting. But as we all know, that's absolutely false. But yet, if you go to Wikipedia, you'll see how many formalisms exist for the magnetic reconnection concept. But it's just absolutely false. If there's any release of energy that's attributed to magnetic reconnection on the sun, it's probably to some type of electrolytic capacitance type event. So a large charge is built up from a magnetic field holding it, and then it releases all the energy once the magnetic field dissipates. There is no magnetic reconnection required. But the false concept of it is perpetuated in the words of Alfven himself. Of course, there can be no magnetic merging energy transfer. That's what they claim. Despite this, we have witnessed at the same time an enormously voluminous formalism building up based on this obviously erroneous concept. I was naive enough to believe that magnetic reconnection would die by itself in the scientific community, and I concentrated my work on more pleasant problems. To my great surprise, the opposite has occurred. Merging, quoted, seems to be increasingly powerful. Magnetospheric physics and solar wind physics today are no doubt in a chaotic state, and a major reason for this is that part of the published papers are science and part pseudoscience, perhaps even with the majority in the latter group, meaning pseudoscience. So what we have here is Alfven, the guy who first coined the term magnetohydrodynamics, go ahead and explains that magnetic reconnection is obviously erroneous, but now that everybody keeps on repeating the concept over and over and over again, the concept just doesn't die. It just perpetuates itself via the formalisms and all the literature inside of textbooks and things. But it's completely false. It's pseudoscience. It masquerades as science, but clearly that's not how it works at all. And sure, it's a big thing kind of, but kind of small in regards to physics. Like, it doesn't have that much importance to explain things, especially when you can explain it with, you know, capacitance inside of magnetic uh, events. But a larger idea that relates to stellar metamorphosis is the fact that if you can have an idea be false, and clearly it's false. The protoplanetary disk nebular hypothesis is, you know, clearly false. It doesn't work like that. What ends up happening is that it's been believed for so long, and there's so much formalism that surrounds it. There's so many volumes on how these protoplanetary disks are supposed to form spherical objects and all this, you know, supposed to work the way they predict it and all this stuff. But the fact that there's so much work on it doesn't make it more correct. It doesn't mean it's actually how it works. So what happens is that many thousands, tens of thousands of astronomers and astrophysicists around the world are focusing on a concept that is just completely erroneous, similar to the magnetic reconnection type thing. So essentially what I'm saying is that it doesn't really matter if something is correct inside of large scientific communities. All they want is for everybody to come into agreement with what they think is correct, and then they work off of that. A lot of the ideas these days are perpetuated by large institutions where, you know, any kind of deviant idea or out of the box understanding is completely crushed, because there's so many more ideas that are rooted in the false knowledge, the formalisms. As you heard, Alfven said, the voluminous work on the false idea, it just completely dominates over common sense and basic reasoning. And that is directly attributable to groupthink. You have a lot of people in a large group all repeating the same thing over and over and over again. They tend to take it as being true without any further investigation. And anything that steps out of bounds is then labeled the pseudoscience. So basically you have pseudoscience in establishment, even admitted pseudoscience, like he says it's fake science. If you have so many scientists believing it, that becomes the science, and then any alternative explanation that goes against that becomes the pseudoscience. Do you see how what they do there? That's how it works these days. They accept the fake knowledge and the fake understanding, and then they're so adamant that they're correct that everything else that steps out of those bounds gets labeled as pseudoscience. So it's like they paint themselves with, I don't know, I really don't have an analogy for this one, but basically you can understand that it's not about science in as much as it's about everybody coming into agreement with each other and forming those social groups and those in-group mentalities, the in-group belief systems, the in-group idea that somehow their academic pedigrees, and the in-group, you know, this is us, this is who we are, this is what we all believe. And it's about forming those social constructs. That's why if anybody comes out and says this magnetic reconnection stuff is pseudoscience, and protoplanetary disk and Big Bang and dark matter are all pseudoscience, they will get rejected because they don't fit into those social groups, regardless of, you know, what the truth is or what actually is possible. Yeah. I made this talk long enough, but I'll link this to the bottom of the page, and read through Donald Scott's thing. He attacks it more from the angle of reinventing the wheel, but I'm not too sure about a lot of what he says in there, but he does have some good points. Alright, later.